Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mixing It Up with Maggie. Today, I'm so happy that I'm doing this episode because I got to meet up with somebody I haven't seen in like over a year, I think. We are here in Barnes& and Nobles, which, by the way, this is like my hangout spot when I was in high school and then actually worked at the store. So I feel like it's just fitting that I always just come back to it whenever I get the chance. But today I'm here with Skylar, and Skylar was like kind of like my former student, but I feel like I like to think of myself as like this teacher forever. So I would never want to say like former, but I'm always somehow like either like teaching or like doing workshops or anything with my students. And I haven't seen Skylar since I think this time last year. You came in for the youth channel and you did you contributed to a piece that we did on the Orlando shooting. I think that was the last thing that you contributed it with us. But you were a media student and you did a really great piece on catcalling, which I'm gonna link down below for everybody to see. And yeah, you're like a media scholar, and you're here to talk to us today about the transgender community within the LGBTQ community. So introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your field of study and what you do for work.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here with you. It's so funny to be in Barnes and Noble right now on the floor, in the section that we thought nobody would be in, which is the test section. So I'm a recent graduate of the New School. I studied media and culture with minors in gender and global studies, and now I'm working with trans youth, trans homeless youth in transitional housing at the Ali Forney Center.
So when I asked you to do a podcast, I didn't know what topic to do, but you were the one who brought it up a little bit. You're like, I asked you, I was like, what is the topic of interest that you wanted to talk about? And you mentioned just this like subsection of the LGBTQ community. And I feel like when we talk about the community, it's kind of like when we have twins, we don't see them as individuals, but we just lump them in together and we don't really think about them individually. And the reason why I also gravitated to this topic, as I guess like you did, was because I, as an intersectional feminist, I feel like there's no such thing as progress if you're leaving someone behind. Like that's always on my mind constantly. Like I'm all good for like, let's say for example, if I get, paid the same as a man, I'll be happy. But I will never forget that I'm also still fighting for other women that are still being oppressed and that they're not getting the same treatment as me, even though I'm a Latina woman. So I'm always constantly thinking about that. And I feel like that might be like a link to what you're feeling as well, right?
I think that the LGBT mainstream movement forgets that they're even leaving anyone behind. It's just kind of like you don't exist. So they're always trying to push trans folks out. And this has been happening for like really since the beginning of the movement. If you think about like the Stonewall riots, trans women of color were leading the movement, and then when gays and lesbians started to get like a glimpse of mainstream acceptance, they kind of like clung on to that and wanted to fit into this narrative of like, we're just like you, meaning like straight cis folks. We're normal, and they kind of wanted to distance themselves from the more radical politics and the trans and gender nonconforming folks. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why? I mean, it's weird to hear it because just 2 weeks ago I went to the parade, right? And I felt like I saw everyone there, but it's through my eyes as a cis woman. So maybe through your eyes, you're watching and you're like, maybe not everyone is here, not everybody's present, not everybody is in celebration mode. even though it's like this big thing, and like it was all over the place, and people hashtagging pride, and I even did it. But why when I mean, explain like what do you mean by that? Because as somebody who's coming from the other side, we think everybody's all good, right? Everybody's represented, everybody's having fun in the celebration. But is June, is Pride Month really celebrating everybody?
Well, I grew up with actually a gay mom, but I didn't know she was gay till I was 10. That's when she came out to me. Even though she'd been dating a woman for like the last 5 or so years. So I kind of grew up not being aware of like LGBT anything. I remember telling her that I didn't think that gay people should be allowed to get married, and having this really awkward conversation because she didn't want to come out to me at that point, but was trying to tell me that, it was okay for gay folks to get married. But even when I ended up coming out to my mom as trans, I didn't get the level of acceptance that you might expect from a gay parent. And so that was kind of my first window into understanding that the community is super divided, and that even when I have this like butch lesbian mom, when I'm experiencing butchness in just a different way, trans masculinity, it's not okay anymore. So when I didn't go to the parade, I went to a Tegan and Sarah concert, which is like the pride event that I did do, which is kind of interesting to be like a trans person around a bunch of lesbians, because I used to formally identify as a lesbian. So I kind of just like pretended I was a lesbian that day, because I still have the privilege to do so. But yeah, the parade is super weird because like, how can we show pride when like trans women of color across the country are dying? Just another trans woman died yesterday. And so when we have this kind of violence, I think we forget, or the mainstream movement forgets the origins of the movement, which was born out of Stonewall, like police violence, and then we have the NYPD marching with us. They have some rainbow flags on their cars these days, and it to me it's just like totally horrifying. Not to mention like the corporate presence. And all those corporations, of course, are invested in prisons. So I feel like the movement just needs to divest from all these kind of violent systems of oppression before we can celebrate. Because right now we can't all celebrate. Like maybe it's easy for cis white gay men to feel like they can be happy, but like I'm grieving all the time for like trans people that are dying.
I feel horrible now that I went to the parade. Like those were not the same things that I was thinking about. I did say to my friend who was with me, they were having like this big float. I think it was for the NBA, and I was like, they spent so much money on this one day, on this one float, and like they were giving away NBA memorabilia and then just things like that. And I was like, I mean, do they? And I was thinking like in their store, and like the stores, will they take off the flag like after June? Like what, you know what I mean? Kind of like what they do in like YouTube and Facebook. I don't know if you saw on YouTube, they have like the pride flag, and like uh, I feel like it's kind of like a trend for that month, which I think happens with Women's Month and Black History Month. But this one, I think, is a little different. I felt very included, but like at the same time, I wasn't looking at it through your eyes. I was like, oh, everybody's having fun. I did see like everybody was there, like corporation wise, but I kept thinking like, how much afterwards would they cooperate with the community, right?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be different too if like these corporations would do more than just have like rainbow pants or like a flag attached to their logo. If they were actually giving money or doing something productive. For example, when I went to the Tegan and Sarah concert, it was at Pride Island, and it's New York City trademarked Pride. So it's like, get the little R underneath the.
Where is Pride Island? Because is it Fire Island? No. Is it?
It's not Fire Island. It's
Okay.
actually right where the Chelsea Piers used to be, which makes it even more problematic because Chelsea Piers ended up being gentrified within like the last 20 years. But before that, there was like a haven for like queer, trans, homeless youth and often sex workers. And so Chelsea Piers is like this huge history. And so then being there this past weekend for Pride Island, uh, there was like T-Mobile sponsoring the event, giving away sunglasses. But there was also just like Bud Light there and like all these other corporations that were just giving not even away tangible items oftentimes. Like the sunglasses were the best resource we got. um, we didn't even we didn't get anything else good for free. We got like Bud Light tattoos. I didn't participate in that, but oftentimes they just wanted you to take a selfie with their photo booths. So they just wanted your image like to profit off of.
Let me play a little devil's advocate here because, and then we're gonna get into the media side of it, but thinking about corporations, do you think that in any way, shape, or form they do it? Yes, for profit. That's probably the number one reason. But in this society, people associate, let's say, for example, Nike with a particular image. Let's say masculinity. Let's say athleticism, and if they come out during the parade and things like that, won't people feel more like included in like mainstream? Isn't that kind of like the goal at the end of the day? Like, but I don't know. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. Like,
Yeah, no, I like that. It's important to think about those kind of things and not get bogged down by, because I'm tend to be kind of negative about this kind of stuff, but it's also, like I'm happy at the same time that we have like Laverne Cox out there and we have some sort of visibility because when you have nothing, that's also super isolating. But something that I also put out there is visibility does not equal progress, or it equals progress for some. So we saw visibility give gains for wealthy gays and lesbians because those are the folks who really wanted to get married to get those tax cuts.
when you think of trans people in the LGBTQ kind of like this like letter meshing up everybody together, why would I want to say, like, do you think that the community should even be included when the community is about gender and not sexuality? Because the other letters talk about someone's orientation, and I think that not everybody knows about the gender unicorn. So if you don't, I'm gonna put it down below for you guys to look at, because I think it's a really great resource. But it really does talk about how there's no correlation between gender and sexuality. So why would they be meshed together? And do you think that that's the reason why they are not as or like they're putting in isolation compared to everybody else?
Yeah, I think for a lot of gays and lesbians, it's kind of like, why are you part of this movement? Even just like a few years ago, like a member of the Human Rights Campaign, like a staff person, like took down somebody's trans flag at a rally and said, you need to wait, like it's not your time. So there's this kind of tension between like gays and lesbians and trans folks. But the reality is a lot of gays and lesbians are policed on their gender and their gender expression and the ways that they're appearing. So if you're like a flamboyant gay man, you're getting policed not necessarily because you're gay, but because of the way that your gender is being expressed. Maybe you're wearing makeup or you're wearing heels. So it's really comes down to like an attack on gender and gender roles. So in that way, I think that the oppression is similar. So in terms of like building resistance, I think it makes sense for these movements to be linked, even though that's not what's happening.
Yeah, I do get a lot of people that are still very heavily confused as to the difference between gender and sexuality and like biological sex and like all of that stuff. So I'm definitely going to put the gender unit. I feel like that's like the best way to educate people. I don't know who came up with it, but whomever did, like, did a really great job. And I love that they keep evolving it too, because before it was like this, it was like the
Gingerbread or something.
the gingerbread person. It was a gingerbread person, and I think it was like missing something. And then they have the unicorn now, and I think that that's like a thing now. Where it's like, oh, I'm a unicorn. I don't know what that is about, but I'm having a feeling that it has to do with like, I don't know why. I don't know why I think it's about sex, like being a unicorn. I don't know.
I have a unicorn shirt now, and I don't know why the unicorn became popular, but I like it.
Let's get to the good stuff, because I'm dying to get into the discussion about media representation. So this is something that I spoke briefly about during an event that I hosted 3 weeks ago at the Youth Media Center, and we did see this little clip from Decoded, MTV's Decoded. Do you know that show? No. Well, I'm gonna put the link down below. But in it, the host, had a trans woman on the show, and they talked briefly about representation in the media, and there were a few things that they brought up. One is that they are actors, like cis actors, playing roles like trans people, and then also gay and lesbian people when they're really not part of that community, which takes away jobs from actual actors that are part of the community. Two, that when they are represented, they're usually either mocked, like it's a comedy, or they're like the evil person, like trying to kill everybody. Like that happens in this show that I used to watch. I still watch it. It's really bad, but it's like my guilty pleasure. It's called Pretty Little Liars, and like it was like a really big deal when the really evil person turned out to be a trans person, and they were just completely kind of like demonized, and like they were psychotic, and they had to kind of like it linked mental illness with being trans, and that's what people went crazy about it. So they briefly spoke about those things, but I also wanted to also mention that you did a piece with Now This on the show Sense8, and their positive message about gender and sexuality in the show. And I hate the fact that Netflix canceled it. Netflix was like my thing, and now like this year they've canceled so many of the good shows, but I personally believe that they did a really good job with the show. Could it have been a little bit more intersectional? Yes. But I think it had to do with the fact that the directors and the creators of the show were also trans people. So they had an influence in how the story was built. So tell me about like your experience, like just, and you're a media scholar as well. So tell me about the representation that you see or the lack thereof.
Oh, that's a tricky question because I'm always trying to find good TV shows to watch, and you have to have lower your standards. Like, you
have to be super critical. Like I always said, I can't watch TV the same way anymore. Ever since I went to college and I learned, how to be much more critical about my media.
Totally. Yeah, you have to be critical, but somehow still enjoy yourself. So sometimes what I do is I watch a show and then I'll just like rant afterward. I'll call up a friend later, but I'll try to like enjoy it. I'll get my popcorn or whatever. But I'm not really watching any good TV shows right now, to be honest.
So you did like Sense8 and what they did with that show.
I thought Sense8 was pretty good in a lot of ways. They had a super diverse cast. They had a trans character who didn't really, the show wasn't really about her transition in like a major way. She just was allowed to be a character, which was like really refreshing. The show, upon like further inspection, I noticed there was like some like white savior complex aspects of it. So,
with Will.
Yeah, with Will. So that was a little gross. So I noticed that the racial dynamics were a bit like not where they should be. But other than that, like I am bummed that the show was canceled because I think it could have gone places. And it's always disappointing when like there's potential in a show and they just cut it. Sorry, there's some people here.
Some people are studying.
I'm totally spacing on TV shows right now.
Very quickly, wouldn't it be awesome? I mean, not in the study section, but like in like one of these history books that we're surrounded by, to actually find like actual like LGBTQ facts or like something like that, like eventually
Yes, we need like a queer history.
section or something.
Yeah, we need a whole section. We need a whole store. I mean, let's be real. Like, I didn't learn anything about queer history at all in school. Totally skipped over, as well as like women's history. You pretty much only learn that women get the right to vote. Um, and like, there's so much more, obviously. So yeah, it's that's what they should do. They should do a show about like queer resistance and like an actual because there's been a lot of like LGBT documentaries about I don't know if you've seen this the movie Milk.
No, but I know about it.
So that movie was like totally misinterpreting a lot of gay history, where it just kind of centered this like white gay man as like the savior. So that tends to happen a lot. So it'd be really great if there could be like
Some like intersectionality in there as well.
yeah, and just some history about like what actually happened. And I think there's something that came out actually. I can't remember the name. Hold on. I'm so spacing.
Well, while you look for the name, I do have to say, like, this is going back to my point before about normalizing people that are different from us. I believe that media is such a great tool to do that. I have my theory that the more you put it out there, the more normal it becomes. Like our brains, and this I learned in like psychology, like we are mentally capable of like being very inclusive. Like these are all learned behaviors and everything is socially constructed, but our minds do tend to put everything in a box. So if you don't fit in that box, it's not, I guess, like you can't compute it. I guess it happens differently with children. This is why I believe like teaching these things when you're young is so much greater than doing it at a college level. But I do believe like the more you put it out there, the more normal it becomes. Like these kinds of conversations and these kinds of characters and there's like the theory of the mirror, right? Is the TV watching us, or are we watching the TV? And I recently had a which I'm gonna post soon. I did a podcast with my mom actually. We didn't talk about Sensei, but let me tell you that she saw me watching the show, and after she got over the fact that it wasn't porn, because she kept asking me like, "Are you watching something? And why are you watching it on the big TV? Like, why can't you watch that in your computer?" But she then, huh?
The group orgy sessions they'd have.
So when it was canceled, like I binge watched it all over again, and she saw that, and then like there was a one of the actors from the show, Miguel Angel Silvestre, he plays Lito. That's like my mom's husband. Like she loves him so much from another Spanish show that he did, and I told her, I was like, "Oh my god, did you know that like he's playing gay in this show?" And she was like, "I don't want to see that." But then like she kind of got intrigued because I kept putting it on the TV, and we ended up having like a really good conversation, even including about like talking about Nomi, and I had to show her like, "Oh no, like no, like she's a trans actress too. Like it's not like she's just playing that character." And even though like my mom is not like the most open-minded person, I felt like the show itself and just having it on, whether or not it was like the best representation ever, it got to a point where somebody that is my mom's age, almost 65 years old, to say, "Oh, wait a minute," and she does this other thing, and I'm like, "Yes, like she's like a hacker, and like she's so intelligent and smart." It didn't stop at just like, okay, she's trans, and that's it. And it got to the point where the show also like normalized it. I felt like it wasn't, like you said, it didn't center it around that. So I do feel that shows, media in general, has this responsibility, but I like the fact that it wasn't in your face about it. I mean, before, anything that I would watch that had to do with like the LGBTQ community, especially like gay and lesbian, would have a designated channel called Logo, and that was it. That was the only time. Or like, you watch like Queer as Folk on, um what was the other one, the one with a gay men dressed straight men, you know that was so like very stereotypical, I felt. And now I feel like, I seen it in other mainstream shows, but I like that is just like out there, but it's not on your face. I have my theory that that's the way that we're going to get to the point where everybody can at least accept each other. Like, what do you think?
I like what you're saying, but at the same time, I'm kind of like sometimes I kind of want to be in everybody's face. I don't know, and that's the one thing I do like about Pride. I like that it's like kind of out there, and it's kind of like kind of defying normativity and normal in a way. Like we're kind of just like dancing on floats. Like half of the men are naked or half naked, like, and I think that's kind of beautiful to keep pushing the bounds of normal. But I also at the same time like having parents that aren't that accepting and seeing the way that media influences them. I see the value in the ways that media really can totally help people come to understanding. When I was younger, I would just show my mom YouTube videos or of like trans guys and trans folks, and sometimes they'd come on with their mom, and so the two of them would kind of just talk on camera, and my mom would just see those videos and then just be completely changed by that. So that's been really cool to use like that as a resource. And my own time, I also like watch YouTube videos nonstop of trans people, and on Instagram I follow like all these trans guys, and there's like so much body positivity there that makes me like really happy.
Yeah, I think social media has done like a really good job. I don't follow anyone on Instagram, but I have seen it because I feel like intersectional feminism, a lot of the movement kind of tries to encompass, not everybody, but tries to encompass everybody. And I have seen, like, for me, like the ones that I've seen that are like transformation, like it's just the journey of this person, and just meeting also people in real life. I cannot even imagine like what they would go through mentally, not even like physically. It's just like, oh my god, wow. And like you post pictures, and like, it's like transformation Tuesday and like all of that, but then it's like mentally it must be like insane, and like just trying to I guess deal with like normal life stuff while also dealing with like this other thing that is happening. Yeah.
It's like you're going through a second puberty, and like you're just supposed to be like going to work every day, but like I woke up this morning and I found out that I have hair underneath my chin, and I was like, what the fuck? And so that was kind of a mind fuck for like a half hour. Then I got over it and had to continue on with my day, so I don't really think about it half the time as I'm taking these hormones. But then I see changes and I'm like, whoa. But at the same time, I can't like, tell somebody down the street. I just kind of have to internalize it and deal with it. And I say deal with it because because it's not all easy, and I'm like what you're saying, like it is exciting changes, but at the same time, it's also like scary. And because like not only do people not know the long-term effect of hormones, there's not been a lot of like research on that. As far as like medical care goes, like that's all kind of in the air. But even just like I haven't told a lot of people in my life, and like I'm gonna look really different in a few months, and what's that gonna be like? What's it like to like wake up one day and like not really recognize myself? I constantly have to get readjusted to my appearance, and some people don't really realize what that's like. My partner even doesn't really understand. I'll like stare at myself in the mirror and she'll think that I'm being egotistical, but it's like, no, like I'm just noticing new things.
So, besides YouTube, has there been like a movie or any other kind of media that you've seen that you can recommend people to watch, even if it's not, you know, for people within your community, but even like somebody like me who's completely like outside and like just wants to, not get bombarded by like stereotypical stuff, but something that's real?
I read this book that totally changed my life. It's called Nevada by Imogen Binnie. She's a trans woman author, and that book will just like make you cry endlessly. And then if you're trans, it'll make you cry like even more endlessly. Um, that was kind of the book that I realized I was trans. When I read it, I was like, shit, now I got to deal with this. As far as movies, I'm still searching. So I really don't have anything to recommend. I mean, when I was coming of age, I watched like um, Boys Don't Cry. I watched a lot of the L Word because there was a trans character there. But these kinds of representations aren't good in a lot of ways. But when you have nothing and you're kind of just coming to terms with your identity or exploring, it can be really helpful to watch anyway. So that's why I kind of said it, just because it's kind of all we have, in my opinion, right now. Have you seen any good shows that you?
Besides, well, I like shows similar to Sensei where the it is not about the character themselves. Like I would think of like something like Transparent, but Transparent is so problematic because the main actor is not part of that community, but they are very vocal about like, okay, this is just like a gateway or like a stepping stone for to introduce other actors to come on board and play these characters. Something like Orange is the New Black, I think, was the first show where I was also like, because at one point I didn't know that the actress was actually trans, and there's a in the beginning there's like a flashback, and so I was like, oh, it's the same. This wow, like they did such a great job with the makeup and everything, and it's like no, like her brother was the one who was playing like before the transformation, and then it was like oh my gosh, like and then to me like that blew my mind. So it was like my first, I guess, like really good like positive. And then also she was a woman of color. It was just like oh, so I would say those. I don't think if we think of anything else, we will put it in the link down below. Like you can give me some either really good movies or things like that. I know like they've been trying to do again to like slip things in. Like I don't know if you've seen Beauty and the Beast, the remake.
I haven't. No,
Can I spoil something for you?
go for it.
So there's first of all it was banned in certain countries because one of the characters has, they don't even like come out and say I'm gay, but they have like gay tendencies. Like they have like some sort of crush on this guy, on like one of the main guys. And then there's this like amazing part where, like they're fighting with this wardrobe, and then the wardrobe like dresses this masculine kind of character into like a woman. And then instead of getting angry, they like embraced it, and then like they did like this thing at the end where like the gay character got together with this character who liked being like dressed as a woman. So in some countries it was even banned, like they couldn't, but it was very, it wasn't like the story was not about them, obviously. It was just like this kind of little nudge. Yeah.
That's so cool. The ways that that's just so exciting. I think that there's so much more to how we can portray gender in TV, like so many more interesting ways that we can portray gender and relationships and sexuality, like all of this stuff. And there's so much potentiality for like story writing. And so I think there's going to be really good stories in the future, especially as we get more trans writers coming in. People of trans experience can really have, like, we have so much to tell. And so I think that the platforms are coming. And I think that the future in terms of media is like going to be pretty bright.
Before we go, because the batteries are almost over, there's so much to say about like what's happening here in the United States politically and socially. What would you like to see? I know everybody has their agenda, especially with this administration. But in terms of your community, what is it that you would like to see? I briefly have here like maybe politically or socially or even with healthcare.
Oh my gosh, there's so much. That's such a heavy question.
At least one thing. What is something that you would like to say, like that you would like to see happen in your lifetime?
I want the bathroom issue to be over. I want us to all just pee in peace and not have that be a problem. Because right now there's obviously like still states trying to pass bathroom legislation. High schools, even where I went to high school, like there wasn't all gender bathrooms, and there was issues when trans folks would go into one bathroom and they didn't look like they passed as that gender. So that just people just need to get over that at this point. And also like healthcare needs to be more accessible. There's tons of botched surgeries that are happening right now. That I think a lot of cis people aren't aware of, but like trans folks are getting surgeries from surgeons who aren't qualified, who say that they're qualified and then they're not. So there needs to be better like medical access like across the board. Not only does it need to be affordable, but like we need to be able to trust our doctors and surgeons. And like right now in this country, we can't.
I think healthcare for everybody is like a really big issue, but I feel like just like we don't have anything in history books, I don't think we have anything in medical books for your community. And so the doctors don't even have like this resource that they can go back to, and like how does this affect, and like what if a child comes in, and like everything. And you guys still have the preliminary thing where like you have to get the surgery, you still have to go through like psych evaluation or something like that, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of bureaucracy. I would like to see that change too. Just the fact that you need like a therapist letter, you need a doctor's letter. It's a mess. It took me like probably like 2 years just to get the surgery that I wanted, just because of the bureaucracy behind getting the coverage from my insurance company.
And besides like getting the insurance and all that stuff, like IDs and like passports. And did you hear, like, did you see like this little notch in Sense8 where Nomi, when somebody asked Nomi like, how do you become such a great how did you make the ID so great? And she was like, well, in the trans community, like they need it, and like nobody's giving it to them, so like she like was able to like forge it.
Yeah, that's totally awesome. I mean, right now none of my IDs match it, so I can totally like relate to that. I just had to get my fingerprints done for my new job last week, and I had to present to them my like female identification, my previous name, and it was luckily I had like a really nice like person helping me. It was actually like a gay man who was like really sweet, and we were able to talk about pride, and we were able to kind of navigate my documents. So that was actually a good experience. But yeah, it's a total mess.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, don't even talk about like being like a person of color and then also going through that, because all I keep thinking about is like when I go to protests and all those places where there are trans people there. If they get arrested, it would be like this other big ordeal, right? Just to get anything processed. Like it's hard enough getting arrested, and it's harder like getting arrested, and then they try to like charge you for like, I don't know, like I feel like I've heard cases where like people have been even like charged for like misrepresenting, like there's like a charge that said like misrepresenting themselves, or like if you're trying to like fake or something, I don't know, something along those lines. So it's weird out there, people. But thank you so much for taking a small part of your day to come to Barnes and Nobles. What are we listening to? What is this? This is like some sort of musical number. Yeah. And I was like, wait, is it Beauty and the Beast, or like they, is it mirroring? Are they mirroring what we're saying?
On the kids section here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So maybe, I don't know. So yeah. So thank you so much for coming by and taking the time to talk about this. I hope that we can talk about it some more, like let's say like a second part, maybe like, a few months or a year from now, and see, like, compare notes and see like where we are, right?
That'd be really awesome. I'm totally down. Thanks so much for having me. So fun.
Links and resources will be linked down below, but thank you guys for listening, and see you next time.